In Provo, Utah, the case against Tyler Robinson took another turn on Friday as he appeared in court, with his legal team pushing hard for a major change in how the proceedings are handled. His attorneys argued that cameras should no longer be allowed inside the courtroom, insisting that the level of media attention surrounding the case is starting to threaten his right to a fair trial. According to his defense lawyer, Michael Burt, the coverage has already crossed into territory that could influence potential jurors, making it difficult for Robinson to be judged solely on the evidence presented in court. From their perspective, continuing to allow cameras and audio recordings would only make that problem worse. On the other side, prosecutors strongly disagreed. They made the case that keeping cameras in the courtroom is actually necessary, especially given how public and controversial the case has become. They argued that transparency is the best way to fight misinformation and speculation, which have already begun to circulate widely. Prosecutor Chad Grunander put it bluntly in his closing argument, saying that secrecy only fuels conspiracy theories, while open proceedings allow the public to see the truth for themselves. A group of media organizations, including CNN, also supported keeping cameras in place, along with Kirk's widow, Erica Kirk, who has remained closely involved as the case unfolds. This all stems from the incident last September, when Charlie Kirk was fatally shot in front of a large crowd during a Turning Point USA event at Utah Valley University. The shooting shocked not just those in attendance but people across the country as news of the event spread. Robinson later turned himself in after a manhunt that lasted more than 30 hours, arriving with his father and a family friend. Since then, he has been facing a series of serious charges, including aggravated murder, use of a firearm during a felony, obstruction of justice, and witness tampering. Prosecutors have already indicated that they intend to pursue the death penalty, raising the stakes of the case even further. As of now, Robinson has not yet entered a formal plea. During Friday's hearing, the defense didn't just focus on cameras. They also asked the court to delay the preliminary hearing, which is currently scheduled for next month. They argued that they simply don't have everything they need yet to properly prepare, specifically pointing to missing discovery materials like a DNA analysis report. One of Robinson's attorneys, Richard Novak, told the court that moving forward without that information would leave them at a serious disadvantage, essentially limiting their ability to defend their client effectively. To strengthen their argument about media influence, the defense presented a series of video clips and screenshots from various news reports. Some of these segments, they claimed, focused less on factual reporting and more on analyzing Robinson's behavior, his facial expressions, body language, and perceived credibility. A trial consultant named Brian Edelman testified that this kind of coverage was not informative but instead leaned heavily into speculation and sensationalism. He pointed out that much of the reporting seemed to shape public perception of Robinson before the trial has even begun. The defense also brought in a cognitive psychologist, Christine Ruva, who explained how pre-trial publicity can affect jurors. She talked about something known as the primacy effect, where the first information people receive tends to stick with them the most. According to her, if that early information is largely negative, it can influence how jurors interpret evidence later on, how they remember it, and even how they deliberate together. Through reviewing the media coverage in this case, she described it as overwhelmingly unfavorable toward Robinson. Prosecutors, however, pushed back against that narrative. They called a single witness, an investigator named Cole Christensen from the Utah County Sheriff's Office, whose report suggested that the media coverage hasn't been one-sided. While he acknowledged that some reporting could be seen as prejudicial toward Robinson, he also said there was coverage that cast prosecutors, the victim, and even Erica Kirk in a negative light. In other words, from the prosecution's standpoint, the media landscape around the case is more mixed than the defense is suggesting. Another issue raised in court involved previous violations of courtroom rules by members of the media. The defense pointed to specific incidents where videographers captured footage that went beyond what was allowed. In one instance, a camera showed Robinson in shackles and picked up audio from private conversations between him and his attorneys. In another, close-up footage raised concerns that someone could potentially analyze his lip movements. These incidents led the judge to take corrective action, including moving camera positions and issuing warnings, but the defense argues they highlight the risks of allowing cameras at all. Before wrapping up, the court also heard more arguments about whether the preliminary hearing should be postponed. Prosecutors argued that the hearing is only meant to establish probable cause, not to present a full defense, and said there is already substantial evidence supporting the case. They pointed to surveillance footage, alleged statements Robinson made, and other circumstantial evidence as enough to move forward. They also warned that delaying the hearing could push the case back by several months, potentially impacting the victim's family's right to a timely process. Despite that, Robinson's legal team stood firm. All four of his attorneys told the court they do not feel prepared to provide effective representation with the information currently available. They requested an additional 4 months to get ready, emphasizing that moving too quickly could compromise the fairness of the trial. In the end, the judge, Tony Graff, did not make an immediate decision. Instead, he said he would review both issues, the request to ban cameras and the request to delay the preliminary hearing, and issue a ruling on May 8. Until then, the case remains in a state of uncertainty, with both sides continuing to prepare for what is shaping up to be a closely watched and highly consequential trial.